Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring the newest release from Colorado Craft. This is their Big and Bold series. So there's a Bird of Paradise, a Columbine, and an Iris. And honestly, their Big and Bold series is actually what led me to fall in love with the company. And when I purchased from them, like those were the ones I was buying. Because I am a colorist and I love coloring these like large images. Plus I think coloring bigger images is so much easier. And for me, it's just like so much more fun. But anywho, but we're going to concentrate on a background technique today, in addition to the coloring of these things. So I'm going to just stamp them down. I'm stamping an intense black ink from Hero Arts so that I can do my Copic coloring. But we're going to dive right into this background technique, which is a fun kind of bokeh look. If you hear what I'm doing is I wanted to kind of frame them out. And so I'm just using, what is this? Scotch. Yeah, I think it's 3M Post-it note tape. And so I'm just framing around the edges and then I'm going to start working on the background. You might notice from these colors that they don't necessarily look like they'll go together. Here's the things when mixing colors. I knew that I wanted them to be a softer background that would reflect the colors that were going to be in the flowers. But I had to make sure that I picked some that would go together, that would blend together. And so I chose some blue violets that were more on the blue side versus the purple side. And then I chose some greens that were more on the blue side instead of on the yellow side. Also, when you're picking colors, especially if it's Copic markers, you want to make sure you're looking at the end of the number series. So like I have a BV00 that'll be blending into a G00 so that they're both zeros on the end. And it's the same thing with everything else. So like I used a BV02, I used a G02, I used a BV04, and I think I used a G16. So the 4 and the 6 are kind of close to each other, but the 16 is the most blue of the options. It starts to get a little questionable as it moves up the series. So anywho, in the background, it does not have to be perfect. Please don't think that it does. I chose to do mine with Copic markers. You could do this with watercolor. You could do this with ink blending. You could do this with any of the things. So if you're worried that like your blend is not going to be as good as you want it to be with Copics or with alcohol markers, that's fine. I don't know how this would work with colored pencils because they have that kind of wax coating, but any of those other mediums will 100% work with this technique. So going in, just kind of layering them, I'm making sure that my strokes are always going in the same direction. So everything in these backgrounds is vertical, and that's what's going to help blend them into each other. You also want to make sure that you're varying your strokes. And what I mean by that is you don't want like a wall of color. Your strokes should be different in height and in width so that way they blend together nicer. And then you're going to see, so like this is kind of the base layer, if you will. And then I'm going to go back in with more of the same colors, the blue violets and the greens, and just kind of integrate them more. I'm going to put some blue violets right over the greens. I'm going to put some greens right over the blue violets. And because they are so close in that number series, as well as both leaning towards the blue side of their color family, they're still going to blend really nicely. So this background just has 2 colors. The other 2 backgrounds will have 3, and I will show you one of those, but not the other, because basically I'm just repeating the same thing over and over again. So once you're happy with the background, and again, you can see here, it's not perfectly blended, but that's not going to matter. It won't even matter, guys, and it's so easy. It's so easy to achieve. So here I'm just removing that masking. You can see my border isn't 100% perfect, but that's okay. It gives it a little bit of an artistic flair, I think. So now for the Bird of Paradise, because I have orange in the flower, I am going to put a little bit of orange in the background, but the same thing. I'm using a YR02 and a YR00. So all of those are going to match up really nicely. You'll see as we go through the coloring, I will periodically speed this up because we are making 3 cards, 3 backgrounds. And I'm trying to fit it all. I'm trying to fit it all in, y'all. That's what I'm doing here. So anyway, what I was going to say is when this release first dropped, I did a completely different card, not completely different, that's a lie. I did a different card. I used the Bird of Paradise. Don't mind my dogs barking. What they're barking at? Nobody knows. But anywho, I used the Bird of Paradise, and then I did an alcohol ink background, but it wasn't as soft. It was much brighter, and I did the bokeh effect with the colorless blender, and ultimately I didn't love it. And that's totally okay, because I'm learning just like you guys are learning, and so if we never try anything different, we're never gonna learn anything. So I will revisit that technique in the future, but this works for me, and it's pretty, I don't want to say it's foolproof, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's so easy to do, and you get this beautiful bokeh effect. I really don't necessarily know that there's any other reason, or if there is any reason to do it any other way. But I just wanted to, like I said, I had the idea. I thought it was a great idea because you have these big florals, and then they have no background. And so you have to put something in the background, right? I mean, even if it's just a solid color, you have to do something in the background. And I thought that this was a really fun way to have the florals be the star of the show, because all of them, except for, well, no, even I guess the iris does a little bit. It's really the columbine that hangs out into the frame. But because it hangs out into the frame and the background is kind of squared off, they look like they're really coming forward with this ton of dimension, once we get in there and color them. And I love that. This one, my girlfriend Dawn, when I showed her the background, she tried to get me not to bokeh it because she's like, I love it so much. It just looks like a card swipe background. And I'm like, no, girl, I'm bokehing it. So here on the left-hand side, the columbine will eventually have some true violet that's added to it, but I didn't realize I needed it yet. In order to get the bokeh look, I'm going to create my own makeshift stencil. So you can do this with any kind of circle dies, or if you have a stencil that already has circles in it, you can use that as well. I'm just cutting this out of vellum because I need something that is going to resist my white pigment ink. And then I'm going to be applying my ink with my Picket Fence Pouncer as well as a finger dauber. The reason I have two different application methods, and here I've kind of zoomed you in, is because it's going to give me two different intensities of color. So the pouncer, I can go in, I can pick up very little ink for the largest circles, and it's going to, you'll still be able to see the circles, but they'll be much softer and you'll be able to see more color behind them. For the mid-tone, or the middle size, one of the middle sizes, I guess, I'm going to still use the pouncer, but I'm going to pick up substantially more ink. And then for the two smallest, I'm going to use the finger dauber, which is really a lot of ink, and it's really very opaque. There isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. You literally add circles until your heart content. Let them overlap. That's going to give you like so much more of a fun look to create this kind of artistic background. And it's this really, really easy way to fill up a background where you have a large focal point without having to really put in a lot of effort. And like, even when I was doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is coming out even better than I could have hoped. So even now, which is now we only just have two sizes, we don't even have the really white ones. It's already looking super cool. Now we're going to go in and add the really white ones, the small as well as the extra small one. And this is just going to bolster that up even further, having the more opaque circles. And I am going outside of the frame. When you look at the pieces in real life, can you see a little bit of that white pigment ink in the frame? Yes. Do I think it detracts from the card? No. Same thing with the circles that I'm putting over sections of the actual flower. Can you see that? Kind of. Does it bother me? No. If it bothers you, you could certainly mask your image, but I didn't want to have to do that, honestly. I just didn't, I didn't want to have to go through and stamp them and mask them. So I did this instead. Alternatively, there are matching dies that you can purchase to go with this stamp set. I don't have the dies yet, but you could certainly do the background without the stamping and then do the stamping, like kind of come back to it. Here with the columbine, you can see we've added the violet And I just did that with the same colors you're going to see me use to color it. It's a V00, I think it's a 000, and then a V01 and a V04. So those are the ones I added. This is obviously sped up quite a bit because you've seen this already, but I just wanted to kind of show you how they all come together. I used the same technique for each one of them, but I didn't want you to miss out on any of the seeing, I guess would be the way that I would put it. I didn't want you to miss out on any of the process. So I just decided to leave it in, and we're going to show the coloring. And again, some parts of it are going to be sped up because I wanted to leave it all in. You always have the option to slow it down, but the coloring, well, is important to my channel because I'm a colorist. It isn't necessarily what I'm trying to teach you this time around, even though I do hope that every time we do this, you kind of garner some more information, about coloring, even when it's not necessarily the focal point. So here's all of our backgrounds together. Obviously the orange is the one that is a noticeable difference, though you can see some of that violet in the columbine. I'm not sure. I think honestly the columbine ends up being my favorite, with the bird of paradise being a close second. But yeah, really, I love these images. I think they're beautiful. So here what I'm doing is I'm going to go in and I am going to just map out my shadows, especially with the irises. They are very ruffly flowers. And that means that there's kind of a lot of lines to pay attention to. So I'm going in with my darkest marker, and you're going to see I am going to speed this up a little bit. But I'm just kind of mapping out where it will be the darkest. And for this, I chose blues as well as blue violets because I wanted it to match my background and, but still kind of stand on its own, kind of coming forward. So I wanted it to be bold enough to stand on its own from the background, but similar enough that they weren't going to be competing, I guess, or contrasting each other. So with all of the little ruffles, I go in and add the darkest shading where it's kind of folded over. So we've talked about this in almost all my videos. You add shading where 2 points meet or where an object lays on top of the other. When it comes to ruffles, when you look at them, sometimes there isn't a right or a wrong answer. Sometimes you just have to pick what part of the ruffle is going to be on top and what part of the ruffle is going to be on bottom. And whatever part of the ruffle is going to be on bottom, that's the one that you shade with your shadows. Whatever part is going to be on top, that's the one that you save for your highlight. As we're going through and working out to our lightest color, we're going to be filling in substantially more of this flower. So anytime you're coloring images, the majority of the color that you're going to see is going to be your one midtone or the other. Like, it's either going to be one or the other. It's never going to be your darkest color, and it's never going to be your lightest color. So the two midtones that you pick, whichever they are, in this case, it's a BV 66 and a B26. That's what you see the most of. And then you'll just see the highlights on the highest portions of the image, and the shadows will be in the lowest portion of the images. I almost did these flowers. I kind of went back and forth about whether or not to do the bokeh technique or to do them where I colored them with markers and then showed how to add like deeper shadows and details with colored pencils, because I haven't done that in a while either. But ultimately, because they are such large flowers and that does leave a lot of the background to fill up without a lot of other things in the set to fill it up, I thought that this technique would be more fitting for these cards. So as usual, when you're doing, any kind of shading, everything kind of comes together when you add the lightest color. And you can see that here as I'm laying down the lightest portion into the petals. the petal just kind of springs to life because we put in those highlights that now make sense because they're toned to the rest of the floral. So you may have noticed in the thumbnail, we're moving on to story time. I'm going to show you all the other colorings as well. And of course there'll be little antidotes as we go. But we're moving on to story time. The reason that there's no sentiments on this is because these panels I'm kind of saving for something special. I told you guys recently about my friend Tina. I did not use her name. At this point, her diagnosis of breast cancer is well into public knowledge, and she's sharing it on social media. That she could not get approved for her medication that her doctor recommended because her insurance would not cover it. So she has it's double negative breast cancer. It's very aggressive. And so she went and had surgery to begin with, but then she has to do chemo and radiation. There's still treatments for her to make sure that she is completely cancer free. And one of our friends, I met Tina 10 years ago at a craft retreat. 10 years ago? 10 years ago at a craft retreat. And just immediately upon meeting her, because I was nervous. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I only knew people online. I had never met them in real life. And some of them I literally didn't even know, I knew of them, but I didn't know them to speak to them when I went to the craft retreat. So I was a little apprehensive about, kind of being the new kid in town. And Tina is just one of those people who just embraces you wholeheartedly, just loves you for who you are immediately. I mean, just such a generous person. She's a fantastic human being. And one of our craft friends described her as a literal ray of sunshine. And man, I could not agree more. She's had so many different things thrown at her and so much adversity, and she just keeps going, and she keeps going with the best possible attitude, and not being full of hate or anger or bitterness, just love for everyone. And she's literally one of the best people I know. She really is. She's so wonderful. She calls me whenever she sees me or talks to me on the phone. She'll go, 911, what is your emergency? Because that's what she thinks of when she thinks of me, just because of our conversations. And there'll be times when I'm at work, with my little headset on or whatever, and I send her a picture with a little caption, 911, what's your emergency? It's funny. But she's just a super good person. And her insurance decided that she didn't need this medication, which is, I cannot even tell you the amount of trash that I think that is. And that's the nicest thing that I can say about it. Well, we're on a family-friendly YouTube channel. But anyway, her doctor appealed to the insurance company, and they still denied it. They will not pay for it. And that is what her doctor has recommended to be the best course of action. How wild is that? That your insurance, who never went to school for their medical degree, can decide that you do or do not need this treatment based on dollars. It's infuriating. Absolutely infuriating. So anyway, one of our craft friends had the brilliant idea, to do an auction that we could help. Well, first we did a GoFundMe, which was amazing. We did a GoFundMe, and I think she got up to $10,000. And obviously unfortunately, that's a lot of money, but it's a drop in the bucket comparative to what this medication is going to cost. And not to mention, she can't work. So Tina went back to school. This just goes to show just how tenacious she is. She's so amazing. She was working at a high school, and she really loved her job, but she decided that she felt like she was being called to go into nursing. And so she went back to school and got her degree, had just started a job in nursing, which is her dream job. And then she was diagnosed with cancer. And you guys know, I'm a Christian. I have a strong faith base. I believe that everything, that God's got a plan. Whatever his plan is, I may be not privy to his plan, but he's got a plan. And so she ended up having to leave her job that she had just started because of the cancer treatments, because of what she needed to do to get well. And so anyway, they did the GoFundMe. It's amazing. You know, so many people donated, but there's still a need there. So somebody had the brilliant idea to do an auction. Like, and we've seen it for other things, you know, like my friend Heather does the autism awareness, and I donate cards to that and they auction them off. And so we're going to do the same thing, us crafters. I don't have all the details on the auction yet. So I'm showing you the cards because obviously I made them, but I am going to auction off these. And I didn't want to put a sentiment on it in case instead of cards, somebody wanted to frame them, you know, like a set to put in their craft room, like an art print set. So I chose not to put sentiments on them. I will when I like send them off to their newfound home. I will include envelopes and card bases so that they can attach them to the card base if they would like to use them and give them away. But if they should choose to keep them or to frame them or whatever, they'll have that as the option as well. So let's go back to the cards real quick. So here, it looks a little funny if you've never seen a columbine. This is actually a super close-up of a columbine because the whole thing is the flower. There are no leaves in this illustration. And typically your outside petals are much darker than the inside petals. And so I colored them using the same blues to match that background, but then I wanted them to be a bit more violet. So I'm just going back over the same petals in the same way with a V06, a V04, and a V01. For the smaller portion of the flower, there are some of them that have like it's like a little cup section that's a bit darker on all of the petals, and then the outside is lighter. And so I really liked the way that looked, and it created a lot of interest and contrast. So I chose to do them that way. And then so I put down the little cup portion in the blues, and then I will color the rest of the flower in the violets, and then add in some of the blue violets so everything looks like it goes together. So anyway, that is why I chose not to put sentiments on them in case somebody didn't want to use them as cards, which is totally fine. You wouldn't have to do that. When I know more, our friend Lonnie is putting together the auction. And so once I know more about it, I will share more about it. And so that way, if you're interested in participating, and it won't be just me, it will be a lot of other crafters that crafters that I'm good friends with that will be donating different items. And then I have an extra special, I'm not going to say what it is now, but I have an extra special thing that I will be donating and auctioning off. And so I hope that you guys will participate if you're able. We want to obviously give, I don't want to say give like a reward. We want to encourage people to help Tina in a way that still benefits everybody. So that you still get something for it, and like ultimately at the end of the day, all of the money is going to her. It's not like it's going, somewhere else, but she needs it. And if I have something that I can do for her or give to her or any of those things that will benefit her, then I'm going to do that because I love her. So that's that. That's why we left the sentiments off. I probably should have mentioned this way earlier in the video. We're almost done. There's also free shipping days for a Colorado craft company. It's their last day that's free shipping. So if you're interested in picking up these particular stamps, it is currently free shipping days over there. So I will link to them below as I usually do on YouTube. So then this is going to be pretty much the last of the coloring. And then I will show you all of the cards at the end. I did add some shimmers to them because art panel or card, they got to have some shimmers. So I added shimmers to all of them, and then I added some white highlights, especially to the stamen. for the iris, the columbine, and then on the bird of paradise. And then that is it. That's all three of the cards. So here's a look at them all together. I love them. I'm super happy with the way that they came out. I hope that you guys will try this background technique. It is so easy, and you'll end up with results that you love truly. And I always appreciate your time. Thank you for spending it with me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.